make almost everything else with it. So what I'm looking for with my knife is full tang, meaning that the height of the blade extends on both sides of the handle, as opposed to often you'll get a rat tang, which once it hits the handle, it gets really skinny going back. And the problem with that is if I'm a baton something, which means like, let's say this is a piece of wood and I wanted to go through it, I'd put my knife up on here, I'd use another log and go down like this and split it, right? If I were to have a rat tang, if the knife was going to break at that tang, where it turns into the rat tang is where it's going to split. I can attest to that. If you're familiar with the military K-bar, I thought if it was good enough for the military, it'd be good enough for me, and I brought it up into the mountains and trying to start a fire first thing in the morning on an October morning, it broke in half. So I wasn't a happy boy. Full tang, preferably high carbon steel. Some people prefer stainless. High carbon is good because if you find a rock that's over a hardness of, I think it's either 6 or 8, so something like quartz, chert, flint, something like that, you can get a spark off of it. It'll generally burn about 600 to 800 degrees. And the other good thing about high carbon is I can sharpen it in the bush. So if I were to find a nice flat piece of sandstone or something, I can sharpen it in the bush. Whereas stainless, if I were to damage it or needed to resharpen it, I really need like diamond tools and stuff. I need good tools. I'm not going to really be able to sharpen it in the bush. 4 to 5 inches in length so that I can baton my wood. Generally, I'm never processing anything over the width of my forearm, so that's plenty wide to get across. And a sharp 90-degree spine on the back of the blade. I use that for tons of things. So I'll show you in a second fat wood, but I'll use it to get shavings off of fat wood, take bark off the outside of the arroyo or off of the mule fat when I'm making my arrows. Cleaning the pulp out of yucca when I'm making fiber, when I'm making cordage out of yucca. All different kinds of things I use the back of the knife for. So the other cutting tool that I highly recommend is a folding saw. Definitely recommend the Bahco Laplander in particular. So there's Silky saws and lots of other more expensive saws. These ones run about 30 bucks. But what I like about these is you can see I can bend the crap out of it. And I've beaten the hell out of mine. You can see this is a new one, but just because I couldn't find my other one. We sell these. But the Bahco Laplander, really like these. And one more comment about the cutting tools. You know, if I was in a boreal forest, I'd be looking for like a 21-inch axe, right? If I was in a jungle, I'd rather have a machete than a little knife like mine, right? It's environmentally, situationally aware, right? Considering I'm not processing anything really bigger than my forearm, between the folding saw and my knife, I'm good to go. One other side note about using these with kids. So like I said, I teach a lot of kids, and I would prefer not to hand a kid a knife that doesn't necessarily know how to use it and hasn't been trained or doesn't have an adult with them. The back of a Bahco Laplander saw is really sharp, so it throws sparks off a ferro rod really well, and needless to say, they're not going to cut themselves as easy with this as they would the back side of a knife. So cutting tool, container. So recommend a 32-ounce stainless steel water bottle. Any idea why I'd recommend 32 ounces?
You can carry water with it. You can cook with it too, right?
Yeah, I could definitely cook with it.
Because most of it, it's perfect for pills or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So all of the pills and chlorine tabs, iodine tabs, all that are all measured on a 32-ounce bottle. So if I had a 40-ounce bottle, I'm kind of guessing, can I put more in? Can I not? So the other thing to be, and obviously I can do lots of other things with this. If I were going to take that water right now, I would filter it and boil it. I would filter it if possible. So I'd filter it through gravel, grass, and charcoal if I had it. But after that, I would definitely boil regardless of whether I filtered it or not. So I definitely want to be able to boil. One other thing to note is if I were to use this for, if I had put like chlorine tabs or iodine tabs in here or whatnot, I would loosen it and shake it like this and let it go all over the place. Any idea why? how shitty would it be if you got the shits because you didn't disinfect the rim? Right? You got nice clean water inside, and then you get Giardia off the rim of your cup. So I do like them with the nesting cup because I can make char easier. I can make decoctions and things like that easier. So not necessarily critical, but nice to have. If I'm going to bring water to a boil, like one of the things we do in our basic class, to pass, you have to do a 15-minute fire, shelter, and water boil. And so having that cup on top definitely helps get you to through achieving that. Fire skills. If there's one primitive skill or outdoor skill to learn, I highly recommend fire skills, because fire is so important. What's so important about fire? Cooking food, disinfecting water, protection. Animals will often come to a fire to see what's going on, but they don't like to approach it. They'll generally stay out. They don't like to be near the fire because they know that people are near fires. What else? Definitely positive mental attitude, right? One of the worst and one of the biggest things is, out there in a survival situation, the boogeyman gets really big. So, yeah, straightening my arrows, right? Cold burning out a container if I don't have a container to put my water in. All different kinds of things for fire. So, pretty important. A few things that I carry in my kit. So, this is called fatwood, and it's basically a pine tree. When it gets hurt, it sends a bunch of sap there, just like we do, tries to clot itself, to heal itself. Well, all that is very resinous and very combustible. And so if I take the back of my knife, what I generally do is I'll take all this dust that I'm making and I'll make a pile. I'll just kind of pass that around. And I'll make a pile about the size of a $50. Once I have that, I'll use my ferro rod and hit that pile. And usually a pile about a $50 size, I'll get about an 8-minute burn time off of it, 8 to 12 minutes. So I'm very confident with that in the rain, the snow, the sleet, the wind. I didn't mention, but one of the things I've been really excited about doing the last several years, for about the last 5-6 years, is I go up to Laguna on New Year's Eve, and I'm the crazy white boy out there and by himself in the snow, in my hammock, spending the night. And yeah, fatwood's pretty much the only tinder I carry with me. So yeah, if you're not familiar, ferro rod, mesh metal rod, metal match, right? One thing to notice on this one, you see all these ridges or dimples. That's because I've let kids and students use this that didn't know how. The reason those dimples happen is the way you're supposed to use it is you're at a 90 with your knife like this. You go 45 degrees out, and then you pull, right? You get good sparks. And you want to be down near the base, so I got a lot of weight and momentum on it, right? A lot of leverage. If I'm out here, I lose a lot, and then it starts to kind of rattle or chatter. Yeah, so these are awesome. What else? Char cloth. So char cloth is really cool. This isn't such good stuff, but we'll see how it goes. Char cloth is really interesting because it allows me to put a spark into a tinder bundle very, very easily. So you can see how lit up that is, right? And it'll just stay there and burn, burn, burn for a very long time until it's all ashed over. So it's a great way to, you take that ember, you put it in a bird's nest, you blow the bird's nest into flame, build your fire, right? So this is really good to have. So the way you make char cloth, or any charred material. So back in the day, people used to char like punkwood, thistle, cattails. Cotton was not a commodity quite like it is today, right? Whereas us, just anything high 100% cotton. You don't want anything nylon or anything because the plastic melts as opposed to carbonizing. But the concept behind this is, what are the 3 things you need to start a fire? Fuel, oxygen,
and spark.
heat. Yep, some type of ignition source or something. So what this is doing is basically starving the material of oxygen. So what it does is it carbonizes as opposed to catching on fire. So once it carbonizes, you can see how easy it takes those sparks, right? So that's a good one to have. And think about when you're on your trail, especially if you had to do it primitively, always think about your next fire. So if I was on the trail and I had to do like a Boudreaux fire in order to survive, and then I had to move off somewhere else, you can bet your ass I'd be charring something to take to my next spot. So if I couldn't carry my ember with me, at least I know I can just hit it with a little bit of spark. Even a spark off a rock will light that. And to kind of digress a little bit, the sparks off of the ferro rod are 2,000 to 3,000 degrees. A spark off a rock is like 600 to 800. So if you think you're going to come out here and take a rock and start a fire, you're wasting your time. There is one thing called a gall, which we probably won't see today. They grow on the coastal sage scrub. Those will actually take a spark off a rock. That's the only thing out here that I know of. I know on the East Coast, chaga will take a spark off a rock, that's basically a dried mushroom. But those are the only things that I know of. The other couple things I carry in my fire kit, no brainer, but instant flame, right? You tell my wife's. And these are really cool. I never used to carry matches, but my buddy Steve that is in the military, the SEER instructor, he showed me these, and now I'm kind of turned on to them, so I always try to keep them in my kit. So these are what's called stormproof matches. And if you're into the bushcraft stuff, or you watch any of the YouTube videos and stuff about fire, you'll see people will do things like they'll take strike anywhere matches and wrap them in paper towels and dip the paper towel in wax, and it allows extra burn time, right? Well, that's great and dandy until you light it and then it gets wet, right? What happens when you light a match and it gets wet, regardless of whether the paraffin's on there or not, it's going to go out, right? At least so they say. So in here, in the water, back on fire, back in the water, back on fire. So that's magnesium at the base of this. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, you can get big ones of these too, like literally 3 times as long. They're called boat matches. But yeah, needless to say, a little better than your traditional match, and something maybe worth carrying in your kit.
Are those different than the weatherproof matches they sell, like REI?
No, these are the same thing. Okay. Yeah, I actually buy these at REI. Yeah, I believe they're the same thing. Make sure that, because do they have the magnesium on them?
Well, they just look like a normal, but thicker, like a normal, and they come in a little orange. Like
oh,
sealed.
Yeah, the sealed ones? No, I don't think they're the same. I don't think those have magnesium. Last 2 things, but not least, cover. So cover's critical, right? So this is basically a one-time use Mylar space blanket, 5x7 Silnai tarp, and a 55-gallon 3 mil trash bag. Trash bags are awesome. You can use them for so many different things: collection, poncho, sleeping gear, rain cover, floor mat. When I went to the Pathfinder school on the 3rd day, it was raining all day. They took our tarps away and we had to create primitive shelters, and you're always paired up with a partner, and my partner and I only got about half of our shelter done before we had to move on to the next deliverable. So I basically slept in a half-made lean-to shelter with my wool blanket in a fetal position inside of one of these trash bags, and I loved my trash bag that night, I'll tell you what. So yeah, lots of good uses for trash bags. And then finally, cordage. So 2 different kinds of cordage I carry. This is a 3-ply tarred nylon called Bankline. We generally won't find it west of the Mississippi because it's generally used for what's called trot lining for fish, and it's highly illegal here in California to do that, so you generally don't see it over here. We do sell this 1-pound things. And then the other thing is paracord, 550 cord, parachute cord. So this is basically 7 strands and then a sheath on the kermantle on the outside. They say 550 pounds, so it's 550 pounds, 220 working pounds. And then the other thing that's kind of cool is you have these 7 strands inside of it. If you can, I highly recommend getting the military grade. The military grade doesn't seem to twist up inside of the kermantle as badly. And the way you can tell that it's military grade is one of these strings will have one of the strands on it a different color. It's generally green, but it doesn't have to be green. But yeah, needless to say, I could take each one of these strands out and use them individually, and then each one of these strands break down into 2 or 3 pieces as well, so I could break it down even further. One thing people say about this is you can use it to snare animals. I call bullshit on that for the most part. It's really limp, so when you're hanging it on sticks and whatnot, it's just super limp. Is it impossible? No. Is it very good quality? No. This stuff, you can see it holds its dimension a lot better because of the tar that's built into it or infused into it. So the bank line, if I were going to do a snare with string, it would definitely be bank line over paracord. Remember though, if you were going to use string, and come to a trapping class if you really want to get deep into it, but if you're going to use string for your snare trap, you want to make sure that the animal hangs, right? Because the last thing you want it to do is like them to get caught in the snare and then just be flipping around and bite the stuff in half. If you're using string, you want to make sure that when the snare gets set off, the animal's hanging in the tree, so they basically suffocate to death and have as humane of a kill as you can, right? And actually have something waiting for you as opposed to just a chewed up string. All right, let's get going.